So yeah, and I have two long boxes. In this long box, I just kind of keep miscellaneous stuff. Usually it's hardback stuff, or stuff that, like, I don't put them in any specific order. It's usually big, oversized collections, stuff like that. So yeah, first up is Walking Dead. This is books 1 and 2. Then this is 3, I'm pretty sure. Then this is 4. Yep. But then I have book 5 over here, because I just have a hard time keeping these together because they're so big. 5, 6, 7. And then back over here in the box. 8, 9. Alrighty. So yeah, I have the first 9 hardback trades. I think there's like 15 or something like that out now. I'll get the rest at some point. But yeah, next up is the Superman Chronicles books 1, or volumes 1 and 2. I really like that series that DC did, because what they do is they publish like the original, every single Superman in chronological order. So that has Superman in Action Comics, and that's some more. I read the first one, never got around to reading the second one, but yeah. Then we have Angel After the Fall, volume 1. Sorry about these really bad camera angles, but it's hard to show these off. 2, 3, 4. Then after that it changes to Angel Aftermath, but there's volume 5. And then here's Spike. I think I reviewed some of those a long time ago, back when I was really bad at reviewing. I might go back and do a ranking video of those volumes, because that's an interesting series. Then we have League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the Omnibus Edition. This has volumes 1 and 2. Let me zoom out a little bit so you can see the whole thing. I really like Alan Moore. I think this is just an interesting concept, assembling lots of characters from literature. Yeah. Then next up I have 2 volumes of Before Watchmen. This is Comedian and Rorschach. And then this one is Night Owl and Dr. Manhattan. I haven't read these yet, but I've heard that this series is really good, and an interesting look at the Watchmen mythology. Next up, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, Black Dossier, or Dossier, however you want to say it. I really like Alan Moore once again. That's a cool concept. Haven't gotten around to reading that one yet, but I will. Then I have 2 hardback Avengers I just kind of picked up for no reason whatever. Volume 3, Time Runs Out, and Volume 4, Infinity. Yeah, but they're not part of the same series. You see they're different colors, so that means they're not part of the same series. But, yeah. Then next up, I have Captain America, The Death of Captain America, the complete collection. I want to get Winter Soldier and Red Menace, because those are the other 2 in this series. I've heard Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America is really good, and I haven't read it yet, but I'll get around to it at some point. Next up, I have 2 DC Omnibus editions. I have Batman, The Golden Age Omnibus Volume 1, and Swamp Thing, The Bronze Age Omnibus Volume 1. I read all of this Swamp Thing one. That was pretty good. It's back when Swamp Thing was a horror book, and I read the first couple issues of this Batman one. It's dumb, it's cheesy, it's how comic books were in the 1930s. Next up I have 4 Marvel Epic Collections. Daredevil, which I've read all of, and Wolverine, which I've read none of. I really like the Epic Collections. I like the idea of reading large chunks of old comics. Let me go grab the other 2. Next up is Incredible Hulk Epic Collection number 1, Man or Monster, and Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes. I haven't read these yet, but I'll get around to it someday. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Ultimate Collections Volume 1 and Volume 2. These are really hard to find in this edition, and I wish that they had continued reprinting the original comic series, because I do want to read them. Because I've read all of this Volume 1, but not any of Volume 2. I will go back and read it someday, you know. They're the Ninja Turtles. They're part of everyone's childhood. Next up, I have 2 Joker-centric comics, Joker by Brian Azzarello and Batman the Killing Joke. I really, really like this Joker by Brian Azzarello. It's creepy and it's kind of disgusting, but it's a great insight into who the Joker is as a character. Then The Killing Joke, one of the most iconic comics of all time, and it's great. It is. It's just excellent. It's just excellent. It's one of those things that you have to like comics to understand how it works, because it's paced like a comic. You know, it's Alan Moore, so it's very much a comic book, but it's really, really good. And then last but not least for this long box, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I'm talking so fast, Soul's Winter. This is a weird kind of series. I don't even know, like, what this is exactly. I just found it. for a good price, and I really like the art style. I think it's an interesting way of looking at the Turtles. I like some of the smaller stories, but the main story I remember reading, and it was just weird. Like, I was like, what? Is this main continuity? Is it not? I don't even know. It's just it was strange. I like this one. OD'd, where Michelangelo like slowly turns from a smaller into a smaller turtle and wakes up realizing it was all a dream. Yeah. So yeah, that's it for this long box. Let me go grab the other one. So yeah, in this long box I keep this is where I put stuff in alphabetical order. It's basically all of the series and random trade backs I've accumulated over the years. So yeah, let's get started showing them. Deadpool vs. Thanos. This is in Spanish, because my dad got it for me in Argentina, and is like, hey, my son likes comics, let me get him a Spanish comic. And I'm like, huh, alrighty, cool. Then Amazing Spider-Man, The Death of the Stacys. I read the first one, the one about the death of Captain Stacy, and that's heartbreaking. It is. And I got this, it was right after Stan Lee died, and I got it to honor Stan Lee, you know. His characters are some of the most iconic ever created, and he touched every single one of us. So, yeah. Next up, Avengers Age of Ultron. Haven't read this yet, but, you know, it's the inspiration for the movie, and it takes place in an alternate universe where Ultron straight up won. So, yeah. Next up is Alias. I haven't read this yet. I got it cheap at Books A Million, so it's not in great condition, because I think the cheap ones are, like, the return ones. But, like, I've heard this is a good series. I'm a big fan of the Jessica Jones Netflix series. So yeah, then with some Frank Miller Batman Year One. Read this, it's excellent. It's not as good as The Dark Knight Returns, but it's still really good. Batman: A Death in the Family, not written by Frank Miller, written by Jim Starlin, but still just a really tragic, a heartbreaking Batman story. Batman Arkham Origins, I just kind of got this on a whim because it was cheap. All-Star Batman and Robin, The Boy Wonder. I just kind of got this because I wanted to read and rank all of the Frank Miller Batman comics, and so, even though I've heard this is the worst one, I asked for it for Christmas, and somebody got it for me, so I'll probably read it at some time. Next up is Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, my favorite comic book of all time, just a truly a masterpiece. Dark Knight Strikes Again. Not anywhere near as good as Dark Knight Returns, just the artwork is not that good, the plot's really disjointed and hard to follow. It's just not really that good. Next up is Batman: The Dark Knight, The Master Race. I really like this one. It's not as good as The Dark Knight Returns, but it's definitely an improvement over The Master Race. Then I have Batman DC Rebirth #1, I Am Gotham, Volume 1, I mean. I haven't read this yet, but I'll probably go back and read it sometime. A lot of people say Batman was one of the better Rebirth stories. Captain America and the Avengers, the complete collection. This has Captain America and Black Widow, Captain America and Namor, Captain America and Iron Man, and Captain America and Hawkeye. All the different series collected into one. So I might read these and rank these at some point, but you know, who has the time? Civil War, the complete collection. Read this, one of the first comics I ever read. It was pretty, it's okay. A lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it. It's a cool concept, just not done very well. Coming of Rage. I got this because I like Wes Craven. He's one of my favorite horror filmmakers. And so I haven't read it yet, but I'll go back and read it at some point. Yeah, whoopsie. Daredevil Gang War. I got this because it was cheap. It was like $3 or $4. It was like, it's that much, and then it was like 75% off. It's okay. It's an interesting, it's by Frank Miller, and you know, anything by Frank Miller is good, so it's pretty good. Daredevil Born Again, masterpiece. Frank Miller's, the best part of Frank Miller's run on Daredevil. One of the best comics ever written. Probably the best Marvel comic ever written. It's just great. Daredevil vs. Punisher, Means and Ends. This one's okay. It handles the moral conflict between the two really well, but I think the TV show did it better. Dollhouse. This is a pretty good little one-shot graphic novel, Dollhouse Epitaphs. I like the series, and so I think that they were going to try to make an ongoing series out of this, but it didn't catch on, which stinks, because it had potential. Flashpoint. Probably the best Flash comic of all time. Completely revitalized the DC universe. I really love it. It's very emotionally resonant. It's just good. Green Lantern, Hal Jordan, Volume 1. Haven't read this yet, but it contains some of the Where did I go? Yeah, Emerald Dawn, which is like some of the original Green Lantern comics. So yeah, I'll probably go back and read that someday because I like Green Lantern as a character. World War Hulk, one of the most famous Hulk comics. I haven't read it yet, but it's, you know, it'll probably be good. The Infinity Gauntlet, one of the most famous Marvel comics of all time. The entire universe comes together to stop not a Darkseid ripoff at all. But it's still good. I think Matt Draper made a really good video about it and like how it kind of represents the burden of godhood really well. But it's you know, it's classic Marvel. It's cheesy, it's kind of stupid, but it's the stuff that works really works. Next up is Kick-Ass. I found this for cheap, so it's not in great condition. I haven't watched the movie or read this yet, but I like Mark Miller as a writer, so it'll probably be good. Next up is Kingdom Come. I love this. Mark Waid is a great writer. It's one of the best DC comics ever published. It's truly, I love the art style. Like, it's painted on there, so it's so good. It's heartbreaking at times. It's so emotionally resonant, but it's so well written and just so compelling. It's hard to not like it. And it's just, I love the biblical references. I love the story and themes. It's just a great piece of literature. Next up is The Lost Boys. I haven't read this yet. This is the one that I have the first issue for, but I'll read it at some point because I love the movie so much. Next up is Star Wars Volume 1 Skywalker Strikes. I have a lot of Star Wars ones. I haven't read this yet because I've heard that the main series isn't very good. So when I get the rest of the trade backs, I might read that all the way through. But yeah, next up, Darth Maul. I read this. It was pretty good. It kind of wrote itself into a corner and didn't really know how to finish itself in its last issue, but it was still pretty good. Yeah. Next up, Darth Vader. I have this series, I believe, takes place in between episodes 4 and 5, and I have the first 3 of it. There you go. Huh. I haven't read this series yet, but I've heard it's good. I've heard it's probably one of the better things to come out of Marvel's new line of Star Wars comics. Next up is Han Solo. I read this and I really liked it. I think it was a really good series. Next up is Mace Windu. I have a lot of these Star Wars standalone comics, so I was going to read them and rank them at one point, but then they just got so numerous. There's so many of them now that it's just hard to keep up. But yeah, it'll probably be good. I'm just going to kind of browse through these. Lando, Obi-Wan and Anakin, Princess Leia, Shattered Empire. Yeah, that's all the Star Wars ones I have. Next up is Stranger Things. Just got this recently. The Other Side. It chronicles Will Byers' thing in the Upside Down. I've heard this is good. It got good reviews, so I'll read this at some point. Then we have some Superman ones. All-Star Superman. A lot of people say this is the greatest Superman comic ever published. It's the quintessential modern myth. I didn't really like it that much. I thought it was okay. There was some good stuff in it. I love how it perfectly captures who Superman is and what he's supposed to represent. But it was awkwardly paced, and I don't know. I just didn't find it compelling. Death of Superman. Tragic story. It's very much a 90s comic, so, there's just lots of just mindless action in it. But the emotional moments still really work. Next up is Superman Red Sun. I've read this, and I really liked it. This is a really interesting take on Superman. It's an interesting glimpse into why people believe what they believe. Next up is Superman Whatever Happens to the Man of Tomorrow. Haven't read this yet, but, it's Alan Moore. It's, I've heard it's one of the best Superman comics ever, so I'll probably read it at some point. Next up is 3 Alan Moore Swamp Things. Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 1, Book 2, Book 3. I've read Books 1 and 2. I'll probably read Book 3 soon in preparation for the show, which I think just aired a couple days ago. Or they just aired their first episode a couple days ago. But, yeah. I think that's a good series. I understand why people call it the best comic book series of all time, or the best DC comic book series of all time. It's pretty great. Next up is Ninja Turtles. IDW, I have the first 3 volumes. I want to get the big oversized volumes because then that's just cheaper and they take up less room. But I've heard that series is good, so when I read it, I'll probably enjoy it. Thor Ragnarok, I just kind of got this on a whim because it was cheap, only $12. I've heard this is, kind of a good, kind of stupid comic. It's entertaining. It'll probably be entertaining. Killjoys, I got this because it's Gerard Way and I'm a big My Chemical Romance fan. It's kind of set in the same continuity as their album Danger Days, and it's interesting. It's an interesting look at this universe, an interesting deconstruction of like a hero and the apocalypse. Then I have 2 Venom ones, Lethal Protector and Planet of the Symbiotes. These are the 2 that the Venom movie was based off of, mostly, and they were pretty good. I liked them a fair amount. Next up is Wanted. Haven't read this yet, but I've heard it's, it's by Mark Miller. It's one of the best, I've heard it's one of his better comics, so, yeah. Wolverine Origin. Haven't read this yet, but like I said, people talk about how it's one of the best Wolverine comics, so I'll read it at some point. Then next up we have Wolverine Old Man Logan. I think this is pretty good. I think it works on a character and on a theme level, but on a plot level, it doesn't quite work very well. For me, I think that like the artwork is cool, the concept is cool. It's a very interesting look at the apocalypse, but overall, it's just okay. Then I have all of the Old Man Logan trade backs. Let me just show those real quick. Volume 1, or no, this is Volume 0, War Zones. Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4, Volume 5, Volume 6, Volume 7, Volume 8, Volume 9, and the series finale in Volume 10, End of the World. So yeah, that was exhausting. That's it for my comic book collection. Please tell me if you want to leave me some suggestions down in the comments. Go ahead. What do you guys think about my collection? Do you like it? Do you not? Let me know in the comments. And as always, be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe. Be sure to watch out for my next video, my CD collection. So yeah, be sure to subscribe. Bye.